Thanks for staying with us. Now, crime and violence continue to be a concern in the country. Violence has claimed the lives of several people in some townships over the past week. There are calls for law enforcement agencies to arrest those behind the killings. The police have come under attack. Some communities claim the police are not visible in the area. Meanwhile, the government has urged people not to take law into their own hands. For more on this, we are joined by Nhlanhla Lux Mohlauli, who is from Soweto Parliament, Lesiba Thobakgale from the South African Policing Union, and Dr. McKinley from Kopanang Africa Against Xenophobia. Thank you all three so much for your time. I must say it would have been great to have a female on this discussion, but next time. Let's perhaps start with you, Nhlanhla Lux. A lot has been going on in Soweto. Over 16 people have lost their lives in that tragic Tavern shooting last week, Sunday. What do you think is going on here?
For the fact that we do not know this enemy that is killing our people, it already speaks volumes. Because if you can start having methods to identify the enemy, then we are closer to solving the problem. So out of me being responsible, there's a lot that I know that happens on the ground, but because we live in a country with laws, we have to respect that. We can't just put labels on some people, but the intelligence on the ground, which is, by the way, a lot of the intelligence that SAPS uses at the end of the day, is suggesting that these formless people are definitely linked, a lot of them, to undocumented foreigners. They live amongst us. We know them. I can tell you what happened 2 weeks before, 2 days before, 2 hours before the killing. A lot of people will have only opinions on the killing because it's what the media is presenting. So
what happened? Tell us what happened.
So it's under investigation. I don't want to spoil the case and start putting out information that is out there. But I can perhaps speak about the similar case that happened to us. We were also shot at, heavy machine guns, shot at South Africans, politely protesting for electricity, asking neighboring communities that we need your help. And these neighboring communities I'm referring to are informal settlements that are predominantly occupied by undocumented foreigners. So when we're in the midst of that type of talk and process of talking to this community, we got shot at, AK-47s. Some of our guys, one of our guys passed away right in front of me. I've got grannies and people who are still recovering from hospital from that chicken farm shooting. So I'm talking about things that we know, that we experience, and a lot of people that like jumping on this, be it on social media or traditional media, honestly just read about it. We live it. They're actually reading about what we go through on a daily basis. So we are more informed and we are more suited to speak about what is actually going on.
Let's bring Lesiba in here. And the reason why this is of huge concern, I think, is because I've been in Soweto the whole week, and we've had other reporters out at other various townships where these shootings have taken place. And now there's sudden police visibility. And the Amaberete have been deployed, for example, to Soweto. But people are saying it's just all for show, and there's going to be actually no solution coming out of this. Perhaps your views on what you think is actually going on, and whether or not more police visibility is going to actually solve the situation.
Thank you so much for having us, and also greetings to the fellow panel members. From our side, as SAPU, we know clearly that the issue of warm bodies within the South African Police Services is a challenge. Now, as we speak, we've got around 10,000 recruits who are in the academies across the country. But even that on its own, it is a drop in the ocean. We need to admit clearly that the South African Police Services does not have enough manpower to deal with the state of policing in this country, even going to the physical resources that are needed. And looking into the deployments that were made and pronounced by the Minister of Police, we see it as a show, because that on its own, it only brings a temporary looking like solution. It does not eradicate the problem that we have. Clearly, by having a TRT posted in those areas where violence occurred, does not automatically remove the problem that those communities are facing. We saw the same thing happen in Diepsloot when he said he's going to deploy a TRT. Where is TRT in Diepsloot now? So it has moved again because the crime trend has went now to Soweto. It has went again now to Pietermaritzburg. It has went to Katlehong. So every time those deployments are going to be made, and even on its own, it gives the members of our communities wrong impressions to say, okay, now we have the police, whereas they will not be able to sustain those police officials in those communities. We have always been calling on capacitating the police, except if when government and SAPS management agrees on capacitating the police, starting from the human capital into the physical resources, and also re-establishing specialized units, which will deal with these crimes that we are seeing. We need murder and robbery. We need stand-up that will deal with the problem that we have with drugs, not to leave it under general detectives and under BISPOF. So that has been the clear call that we made. And our communities are frustrated because the lack of manpower that we see, it affects them. They are the ones who are taking the brunt at the end of the day. And the members who are on the ground, they are doing their level best with the little that they have. But top management of SAPS, they are failing those members because they are not bringing the necessary resources that they need to ensure that they serve our communities. But as for making sure the minister enjoys doing that, but we do not agree with that. He needs to bring in permanent solutions in order to ensure that our communities will receive service delivery in terms of policing.
It just doesn't seem as though the solutions are forthcoming. I mean, everyone's saying that this is nothing but a show. But I want to bring in Dr. Dale, and you've released an extensive statement where you say that people should not take the law into their own hands. But just hearing the struggles on the ground, community members are completely fed up, and they feel as though there is no police visibility, there is no community safety, there are no solutions to deal with the problems that they have red flagged time and time again. And I specifically speak to the issues, for example, in Nomzamo, where community members have told us that nothing is being done, not only just in Nomzamo, but in a number of areas, in a number of townships. What is your view on what happened? I know you're saying this should not be blamed on foreign nationals.
Well, the first thing is that crime is not something new in our country. We have been having unprecedented levels of crime, criminal activity for the last 10 or 20 years. One has to simply look at the SAP statistics alone and other things to understand that. And people should be upset. People should be angry. We've covered this ground in terms of the lack of trust in our authorities and our police services, the incredible poverty and inequality in many of the communities in our country, and people are basically in desperate situations. So it's understandable. And CAX also understands this very much because most of our members are on the ground in the communities themselves as well and are angry. We're just simply saying that, first of all, the solution is not to take law into their own hands because, as Martin Luther King once said, if everybody an eye for an eye and a tooth for the tooth, you end up with a toothless and a blind nation. We can't simply just continue to have violence on violence and retribution. It has to be a situation where the citizens of the country begin to start changing the political and economic situation, the leaders, the capabilities of our institutions, whether that's law enforcement or others. These are the things that are going to change our societies. It's not going to change the result of blaming particular individuals. And what we were pointing to was that on social media, where you have unattributed videos and voice notes being circulated saying this is a foreign nationals. If there is evidence, bring the evidence forward. If there is charges to be made, make those charges. Our situation is criminals are criminals. It doesn't matter whether they're foreign nationals, it doesn't matter whether they're South Africans, it doesn't matter what ethnic or racial group they are, whether they're white-collar criminals or otherwise, they should be prosecuted. The problem is in our country, we have a lot of impunity in terms of that lawlessness, and that's what people are responding to. So if we want to address the problem seriously, then we're going to have to do that in a way in which we look at those who are making the decisions and the institutions which are supposed to protect us in law and not go and basically then try to exacerbate the situation, which will only increase violence and retribution further and further.
Lux, perhaps your response to this, because the reason why I asked this is on, I think it was Wednesday, the community took matters into their own hands just around the corner from Nomzamo, where it's believed somebody had been mugging people on their way to work. Community took matters into their own hands with the Amabeleta around the corner. Yeah. So communities are fed up. They just don't see law enforcement doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Look, let's first say Lesiba. Lesiba is very correct. We are under-resourced when it comes to law enforcement. Even if you just add all of them put together, from your Johannesburg Metro Police Department, if you're in Johannesburg, to SAPS, to state security, we all just need to own up, like he says. I agree with him 100%, and say that crime is way above our resources put together. We need to pull up our socks. We need to do better for South Africans here in South Africa and everyone else living in South Africa. But now, where I just have a small difference, even though I agree with a lot of what he says, is our good doctor. Our good doctor needs to also understand that it is not easy for us to say that crime is crime, doesn't matter who commits it. It does matter, because it helps us get to the depth of the crime, the bottom of the crime. If it's committed by young people in varsity, then we must understand the dynamics around it, so we can make sure that it's a sustainable solution to solve this particular crime. And if we say that Lux commits a crime here at ENCA, and someone who's not documented, their fingerprints are not on the system, who's likely to be caught? Lux is. So therefore we've got people who are ghosts in our communities who can operate and commit crime and have a high chance, even nearly 100% chance of not being caught. Because today we catch them, I'm talking about things we know. Today we catch them, his name is Peter. Tomorrow we catch him, his name is Tom. So he can play around. I can't change who I am. Asking people to be documented in our country is not an opinion. It's something that is there. It's not something that we ask for because we woke up bored. It's within the law. And if he says that some people must be excused from not being documented or being legal, you and I are legal in this country. That's why you've got a document that can hold you accountable with the systems. But if we say that, excuse other people because there's a fear, if you start focusing on them too much, then we start borderlining xenophobia. Xenophobia is a moral issue, ethics issue. It's not a legal issue. If you were xenophobic today, it is your opinion. It's what you choose for your life. You can't go to prison for being xenophobic, even though I'm encouraging that don't be xenophobic. But people want to hide behind the term xenophobia and other terms that are synonymous to xenophobia instead of dealing with the truth. We got shot at. Where's the guy that took my brother? He can smile all day and wiggle his head, no problem, doctor. But when was the last time you slept on a kitchen floor? When was the last time the doctor came to Soweto and actually received AK-47 bullets flying at him? He's a little bit old, I can see. He probably lived in the previous era, and maybe he might have handled a gun at that time. But I'm saying now, when was the last time he got shot? And he knows that after being shot at, those people can't be held accountable because we proved who these people are. We know who they are undocumented. I'll wait for the answer.
Heidi, can I please respond?
Sure. Yes, you may.
Okay. First of all, the facts, we deal in facts. We don't deal in projections or other things. So the facts are that in the terms of undocumented people in our country, there are more undocumented South Africans than there are foreign nationals. Where the second fact is that the reasons for the undocumented, many people, including foreign nationals who are undocumented, is precisely because of the corruption and dysfunction within our home affairs and our immigration system, which needs to be fixed. And these are where the policy issues need to be. If you have a problem, if you have a societal problem, for example, let me just take a metaphor here. If you have a problem, we see in the United States, for example, with regards to abortion. Now, those who are against abortion want to blame women oftentimes themselves for the fact that they have become pregnant and they should then have, you don't blame the victim in some cases. You look at the system itself, and you try to fix that system in order that you don't have undocumented people, that you have a proper immigration and system. That's what we're saying. So we're not trying to ignore the problem. And what we're also saying, and I think most South Africans are saying, is that given the past of this country, to travel down the road of basically division and hatred, whether that's ethnic hatred, whether that's gender hatred, whether that's xenophobic hatred, whatever it is not a solution in the longer term. So if we are serious about dealing with these problems, and I would hope that all of us are serious about dealing with them in our own ways, then we should look at where we are going to be able to fix them. And that's what we're talking about, as opposed to getting into arguments about who is undocumented, who is not, and where those problems, to individualize those problems, as opposed to looking at the systemic issues. And that's the real issue for us. Thank you.
Okay, Lesiba, I just want to bring you in here. You can see that there's now an issue around documented versus undocumented, but at the end of the day, people are still dying and people are still being shot, and there's concern that the police are not going to be able to crack these cases. I mean, you've had multiple shootings at a number of taverns, at a number of areas in less than a week. Over 20 people have lost their lives, and people would say that there's no crime intelligence on the ground. There's absolutely nothing that police are doing to try and sort this out. What is your view on this? Do you think it's an undocumented foreign national issue, or do you think it's broader and bigger than that?
Our view has always been straight in terms of crime intelligence, that it has collapsed. It does not have leadership. The crime intelligence, it's supposed to know that in Soweto, on such and such a day, at such and such a time, a shooting like this will occur. These are the perpetrators. What vehicles are they using? What would they be wearing? What firearms will they be utilizing? That is proactive policing. Intelligence is supposed to know prior to that. But we have a challenge in this country where crime intelligence has been politicized. It is there to serve political interests and not the interests of the inhabitants of the republic and also the property of those who are owning property in this country. So the collapse of the crime intelligence, it is the sole reason why policing has to be reactive instead of it being proactive. Because remember, if crime intelligence was spot on, if it had not collapsed, we would be able to know everything and be able to prevent things from happening even prior to them happening. But they are led to happen. Instead, we react, we start to investigate, whereas lives have been lost. People have died, people have been shot at. That, to us, it is a challenge that we don't even have a divisional commissioner under crime intelligence, which is a very important division within the South African police services. So our view, it is clear that crime intelligence really needs to come up and really leave being politicized. It needs to be depoliticized, firstly. It needs to take leadership. There needs to be a divisional commissioner appointed there to ensure that he or she gives leadership to the members who are there within crime intelligence, so that proactive policing could be the first thing that becomes a priority to the South African police services instead of reactive policing.
Lux, I want to speak about solutions. We always speak about the problems. We've spoken about how over 20 people have died. Alex yesterday was in complete shock, and we have our reporter out today there as well. Families are grieving. They don't understand what's happened. People in Soweto also grieving. Nobody understands what's happening. But do you think we're going to get to the bottom of this? What are the solutions? What do we do moving forward? How do we allow this to continue?
Look, Heidi, we'll never get this bucket full while we still have the holes. So as much as we want to talk about the big issues, we need to appreciate that the small issues, when they all come together, they actually form part of the greater issue. The communities need to be empowered more to help the police. There shouldn't be a gap between law enforcement and the ordinary people of our community. Now there's a big gap. Some of that gap is because of the same police. There's a lot of trust issues. You can't have a police van going to a drug dealer's house collecting every 12 o'clock, and it's normalized. I grew up seeing it. It's not something that started. I don't remember a time when there was the seamless policing in our communities. So we need to have leadership both in government, in communities, and in law enforcement that suggests that all the gaps and the divisions are something of the past. We work together, we come together, we honestly unite against crime, because there's no one man or one man's not an island or strong enough to fight this crime. We know more about criminals that are committing crimes in our communities because they happen to be our uncles. I can tell the police where my uncle is. But the police will need to go and use a lot of more resources that I can save the state time and money if I was working with the police. So it's not being a snitch. We also need to correct our social elements in our townships and everywhere across the country. As soon as you start working with the police, history tells us, because we come from an era where our mothers couldn't speak to police, otherwise they are snitching. But they're giving birth to us, and they're making us inherit such language and thinking and narratives. This is a new time. We need to encourage our kids that the police are an institution that we must all try to work with, whether they like it or not. The police will always be corrupt because the people are far away from the systems. The closer you bring the people to the systems, the less policemen will have the room to exercise corruption.
But Lux, sorry, I just need to interject there. You know, police themselves are scared to go into these areas. Police have told me this week that we won't go into those areas. We're too scared. Those people are highly armed. They have ammunition that we don't know where they get from. They hide on the roofs of the shacks. They see us from afar. We don't see them. Community members don't want to engage. They don't want to get involved because their lives are at risk. So how do you break that? How do you get the two to work together?
By focusing on the truth. Leave the man. Don't play the man. Play the ball. What's happening in our communities? Who are in these informal settlements? If you want to talk truth about it, let's speak truth to power. Let's say that these people are, we can categorize them. Where do these people come from? Where do they work? And then the police will have better data to deal with the problem. But as soon as the community starts speaking truth about the situation, then we've got groups aside to say that, but you can't speak like this, speak like that. We're tiptoeing around the problem. Solve the problem for what it is. We can't have people in our community that are undocumented. Say it as it is, so that the people can deal with the problem for what it is. Do you have problems in home affairs? Let's deal with the problems. If it means that we must get rid of the old system and create a new one, we've got kids that are coding. People that are running home affairs don't even know what's coding. Let the kids that are coming from this generation code new systems that will be more watertight than the old systems. We've got cybercrime. You've got people in the police force at the high level. They don't even know what cybercrime. They don't even know how to put measures in place to deal with cybercrime. So our country is gone. We just need to save it. We are lying to ourselves when we start saying that, no, we must defend. Defend what? That's not there. Every pillar of our society is gone. It's gone to even some South Africans, not only foreign people. Some South Africans are just as horrible. They sell drugs to kids. They're the drug dealers. You are now dealing with a drug dealer who understands the community better than the police who are deployed from Pretoria to come to Soweto. So these things just have other dynamics that honestly need to come, see all of us come together and solve the problem and be honest about the problem. If Lux is a problem, Lux must be dealt with. If the government's a problem, let's deal with the government and deroot corruption inside our government systems, police systems, and society at large. And that's it.
Lesiba, just your last comments. I've completely run out of time, but perhaps just your last comments on a way forward. I mean, I'm actually like out of words because I just can't understand how this is continuing in our communities. Families are grieving. People have no idea what's going on, and these shootings and murders just continue.
I would agree with Lux to say there need to be cooperation between communities and the police. Community Policing Forum plays a critical role because they are the ones who would give information to the police, and where anyone within our communities are unable to report to the police, fearing anything, that's where the role of Community Policing Forum comes in. So we need to revive our CPFs within our communities, and those CPFs, they also need to ensure that they carry the best interest of communities at heart so that they could cooperate closely with the police, and then we would be able to deal with all the challenges that we see within our communities. Because those who are perpetrators, they do not come from anywhere else, but they come from our own communities. We know them. So if that role can be played in that manner, it is our strong belief that the cooperation between CPF and also the police, it would yield good results. But the issue that we are still concerned about, the lack of resources. Yesterday, a police station in Morocco, one officer was alone, a female, with 24 prisoners. She was working their night shift, posted by herself. So if SAPS management does not deal with the issue of capacitating the police and dealing with the shortages and resources, we would indeed continue to see our community members suffering, and even our members themselves' lives being at risk, because then police stations get robbed because criminals are after guns, and they know if police stations do not have manpower, they will go and fetch those guns. And on its own, we cannot allow such a situation.
Okay, and just lastly, Dr. Dale, from you, perhaps just tell us what your comments are and just moving forward.
Well, I think it's clear. We're not going to solve the crime problem in our country by just simply putting 1 million police on the streets or militarizing. But we learned under the apartheid system that doesn't work in that context. It doesn't mean that we don't need better policing. It doesn't mean that we might not need better CPFs and relationships between communities and police. But if we want to speak truth to power, then let's get to the bottom of the real issue, which is poverty and inequality in our country. And this is where, if one looks across the world, where the majority of the population is in poverty and inequality, is desperate, then you have social dysfunction, you have problems, you have criminal activities, people take advantage of that, there's mafias, there's a whole range of different kinds of things. So that's the first thing. The second thing is governance and leadership. If we are a democracy, we still are a democracy, and we have the ability to change that leadership, and we have the ability to put new people who are making those decisions, whether that's in government or whether that's in political parties or whatever. And so we are enjoined as citizens to do that, as opposed to simply just taking things in our own hands, because that's not a solution. So this is a long-term challenge. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. This country has very deep-seated problems. We are just coming out. I think we have to also remind ourselves sometimes that we're still a young democracy coming out of centuries of oppression and inequality. And it's going to take time, but I think we can get there if we actually then concentrate on the real issues and the real problems in dealing not only with crime, but the social inequalities and economic problems that we have in this country.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. That was Dr. Dale McKinley, who's from CAX, as well as Lesiba Thobakgale, who's from the South African Police Union, the national spokesperson, and Nhlanhla Lux Mohlauli, who's from Soweto Parliament. Thank you all three so much for your time. I do hope that there are solutions and that the police are able to crack down what truly happened, because this just cannot continue.